on? Yep. Okay, well, good evening, everyone. I'm Harry Sherrod, and on behalf of the Talks team, very warm welcome to Brooklands this evening. I'm sure you know that Brooklands had a very, very long association with the RAF, and indeed going back to the Royal Flying Corps in the First World War that led to the formation of the RAF in 1918. And if you are a member of Brooklands, you've been up to the aircraft factory and the museum, you'll see World War I aircraft there, right through to the Second World War and into the Cold War as well. So about 60 years of association between Brooklands and the RAF. So on that basis, I'm very pleased to welcome this evening for the first time to Brooklands the official RAF Presentation Team. We have Wing Commander Manjeet Ghatoara and I nearly got the job title wrong, sorry, Air Specialist Catherine Ryan. Thank you very much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. They always say don't start with an apology, but I'm going to, and I'm so sorry it's taken me so long to come and see Brooklands, because I am a petrol head. I do have a TVR in the garage, which spends more time in the garage than on the road. I fly microlights at the weekend as well. I'm an engineering officer in the Air Force, we'll talk about that later, and it's taken me this long to come down and see Brooklands. Thank you so much, Harry, for organising this and for taking us round. Do you know what? I want to talk about the museum more than I want to talk about this. That's how much I really love this place, and I will be back. I'm joined, like we say, I'm joined today with Air Specialist Catherine Ryan, and we'll hear about her in a moment. But first of all, let's find out what the RAF is doing for you today. We're going with this one. So, well, there we go. That's me, Wing Commander Manjeet Ghatoara, on probably the best job I did in the Air Force. That's when I was the senior engineering officer on 99 Squadron, C-17s. So I was there when we were initially pulling out of Afghanistan and doing all sorts of other funky stuff. I was also there when we brought back the first Ebola patient, not to my knowledge until I get a phone call from the guys in the back on base, and they say, oh, we're bringing back the first Ebola patient, and I go, we didn't do that, and they said the Prime Minister just told us to. But I first started off my career, where's the air cadet gone? There was an air cadet somewhere in the room. Yeah, I started off in air cadets. So my father was in the Air Force. I kind of followed him around, but I started with Air Cadets, and that's where I really got the bug to join the Air Force and figure out what I'm going to do. I went off and did a degree. I did an aeronautical engineering degree, and I joined up as an engineering officer. But I'm one of the few people in the Royal Air Force, or a few engineering officers, that have done both sides. So I've actually done communications electronics side, and I've done the aircraft side as well. So at one point, I used to, if anybody knows the golf ball near Alnwick up in Northumberland, that's actually a remote radar head. So I actually ran that place. It's a long-range air defense radar. That was my first tour. And then I went on to the Century aircraft, the AWACS aircraft. I was a junior engineering officer there. Then I came back, moved back into the comms world. Oh, I nearly forgot the Queen of the Skies, the mighty VC-10. So I'm so wax lyricaling about the things that you have in this amazing museum. I was also the avionics desk officer back in the day for VC-10. Little side note story on that. My mother flew from East Africa on a VC-10, which we then bought and converted into tankers. But to see one here and keeping that history alive is just amazing. I then went into the communications world purely, and I actually ran the airfield nav aids out in Bastion. And that little clip beforehand where the aircraft was touching a little bit early before the threshold, that used to happen all the time at Camp Bastion, and it was mainly all the Russian aircraft that the other nations were flying, so lots of Antonovs and Ilyushins were flying very, very well. There were marks like that all over before the threshold of the runway. And then I came back to the UK, and then I became the senior engineering officer in 99 Squadron, as I've already said. So seeing that video, it still puts the hairs on the back of my neck up, because it was just the most amazing squadron. And just latterly seeing that aircraft bringing back the Queen, when we repatriated her back from Scotland, it was just the proudest moment in the world. Knowing that I was part of that squadron once, it just doesn't stop doing great things. Just recently as well, I don't know if anybody watched the evacuation on Channel 4, but it was the C-17, the A400, that brought back the last people from Afghanistan as well. Again, super proud moment to see the other Queen of the Skies bringing back those people. But now, I'm still an engineering officer, but I'm doing a slightly out-of-branch trade, and I'm in media, would you believe? So I'm the internal comms officer for the Royal Air Force, where I have to make sure that our senior leadership are looking good, but also saying the right things, and also passing down the policies and direction that the senior leadership give us. So that's me in a nutshell. Over to you, Catherine.
Thank you, sir. So I am Air Specialist 1 Technician, Catherine Ryan. So my rank at the moment is very long. I don't know if any of you know much about the RAF, but it used to be called SAC, Senior Aircraft Technician. But because we are progressing with the times, we have changed the rank so it doesn't include man in the title. So I'm now an Air Specialist 1 Technician, and I can't wait to get promoted to Corporal because it's much easier to say. I actually joined the RAF quite late compared to most people. So I was 30 when I joined up. So arriving at RAF Holton to do my basic training, I was older than everybody there. I think I was older than some of the corporals who were in charge of us as well. But it was incredible. And it should have been a challenge, and I was ready and raring for... No, I take that back, it was a challenge. It should have been difficult. My dad was in the RAF, and he was like, oh, good luck with basic training, good luck. It was one of the worst times of my life. But I got there, and it was challenging, but it was incredible. It was such a journey, that 10 weeks going from a civilian to an aviator, to become part of the military and part of something like that I could be so proud of. It really was one of the proudest moments of my life, passing out here on this day. This was my graduation day, and I've just enjoyed it ever since, and I can't see myself doing anything else now. So before I joined up, I spent my 20s going from job to job, thinking I wanted to be a social worker, thinking I wanted to work in a nursery or in a secondary school, and then I thought, no, I want to work with computers. But I'm old now, I'm 30, how do I do that? But the RAF offers apprenticeships, and you can join up I think up to the age of 35.
Yep.
And it was the best decision I've ever made. And after my apprenticeship at RAF Cosford, I actually got posted into RAF Cosford to work in IT. I haven't actually mentioned that bit, have I?
No.
So my trade is I'm an IT technician. So my job can be so varied. I can be working at RAF Cosford, where I was, supporting the network at the radio school, making sure that everyone's got accounts, all the network is working, everyone's got a laptop. If the laptop's broken, it comes to me, I fix the laptop. Basic IT support like that, which I absolutely loved, and I learnt so much doing that. And now I got an early posting to RAF High Wycombe, so I'm on the RAF Presentation Team as the IT technician. So I'm sort of on-road support as well as presenter for all IT needs, which is great because I can say to people, I can say to my family, I'm an IT manager, which is wonderful to be able to say. But I'm really looking forward to a future posting to a flying base where I could be working on the new F-35 aircraft, because there are more lines of code in the F-35 for the F-35 to take off than it takes for a space rocket to take off. So it's basically just one big flying computer, and I could be part of the team that fixes that makes that keep going. So working in IT in the RAF is absolutely incredible, and I am just at the start of my journey. So that is me in a nutshell. Let's move on to the presentation. So, the first responsibility of government in a democratic society is to protect and safeguard the lives of its citizens, and your Royal Air Force lies at the heart of that. We provide full spectrum air and space capability, and we do this professionally, effectively, and affordably. Our service offers political choice, global agility, and value for money. The Royal Air Force's reputation for safety and excellence is perpetuated by a highly professional workforce which acts to protect our national sovereignty by defending Britain's skies, promote the UK's security and prosperity globally, and project British power and influence around the world. However, in a turbulent world, we need to stay ahead of tomorrow's threats by building a next-generation Royal Air Force which continues to adapt, innovate, and exploit all modern technology. To amplify these points, I'd like to turn to the Royal Air Force's most senior officer, Air Chief Marshal Sir Richard Knighton.
Hello. As Chief of the Royal Air Force, I'm delighted that you've joined today's presentation to learn more about who we are and what we do, delivering air and space power to protect the UK. For more than 100 years, the Royal Air Force has protected the nation's skies, and our role today is as important as it was in the past. We are on operations around the world 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, defending the UK's and our many allies' interests. Ours is no ordinary job, and the nature of our work offers the UK government options that only the Royal Air Force can deliver, often within a matter of hours. Whether it's providing vital humanitarian aid after a natural disaster, evacuating British citizens from war-torn countries, or delivering a long-range precision missile strike against hostile forces, we protect our homeland and defend our allies with enormous courage and pride. Thanks for coming along today to find out more.
I'm going to go slightly off script here now, because that's Air Chief Marshal Sir Richard Knighton, but I don't know if it comes across in the presentation later on, but he is the first Chief of the Air Force that's non-air crew. So he's actually an engineering officer, just like myself. So I remember when I joined up, they turned round, a little anecdote for you, we do this specialist officer training, and they turned around and said, right, everybody stand up. Right, all the loggies, you sit down. All the engineers, you sit down. all this, and they kept going through the whole room. And they said, right, last things left are fast jet pilots. Okay, right, you guys, right, whatever they were, tornadoes, you sit down. There was one person left standing, and he was a Typhoon pilot. And the directing staff then turned around and said, do you know what? You're the one who's eligible to be the next Chief of the Air Force. And now, that was a good, I think, 24 years ago. Now I look back on that, and I was talking to Pete. Pete was an engineering officer as well in the Royal Air Force and served over 16 years and actually served with Sir Rich Knighton as well. And I served with him back in the day. I was a very junior flying officer, I think I was, when I first met him. But that gives a real insight to where the modern Royal Air Force is going. You don't have to be a pilot to reach the very top. I better get back on script before she tells me off. As we look forward to the future, we face considerable threats, challenges, and the geopolitical climate is ambiguous, with state and non-state actors looking to disrupt the established world order. Our adversaries seek technological advantage, and the future operating environment for the RAF is likely to be both complex and contested. To gain the information advantage, we need to adapt and stay ahead of these threats by harnessing the full potential of our people, our aircraft, and all of our systems. The future direction of our service is the Royal Air Force strategy, which focuses on three main themes. These are: succeed today, innovate for tomorrow, and value our people.
We operate in very challenging times, with numerous hostile forces seeking to destabilise the security and prosperity that much of the world had taken for granted. Methods of warfare are changing rapidly, with new threats evolving, even as I speak to you today. That's why the UK government has invested so much in defence and the Royal Air Force, to give us the very best chance of staying ahead of those who would do us harm. You'll hear about our incredible aircraft in the presentation today, including the F-35 Lightning, Poseidon Maritime Patrol Aircraft, and the remotely piloted Protector, which are all at the leading edge of aviation technology. And there's much more to come with our future combat air system. But it's not just about our incredible aircraft. Information and how we use it to our advantage, digital technology, and the exciting opportunities offered by the space domain are all vital to our future success. But none of this would be possible without the fantastic men and women of the Royal Air Force. It's the quality and talent of these outstanding people, military and civilian, that makes us the modern, inclusive fighting force that we are today.
The Royal Air Force's first enduring objective is to manage our resources, operate safely, and maintain excellence to ensure we can succeed on today's operations. Operating 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, we are committed to protecting the safety and integrity of the UK's airspace and working with allies against threats overseas. We also protect and defend the UK in the new domains of space and cyber, using our expertise to enable military activity around the world through our leadership of UK Space Command. We project British power worldwide using the fundamental roles of air power, which are control of the air, attack, air mobility, and lift, as well as ISTAR, which stands for Intelligence, Surveillance, Target Acquisition, and Reconnaissance. As a measure of our global reach, last year the Royal Air Force deployed more than 7,250 personnel to 75 different countries, directly supporting 41 operations across 5 different continents. Supporting the national response to the pandemic, our personnel stood alongside the government departments and the NHS to provide essential contributions to communities across the UK as part of the COVID support force. Furthermore, 667 air personnel provided military aid to civil authority support whilst covering industrial action. Global operations are at the forefront of the RAF. Let us now look at some of that highlighted in our air power capabilities.
So, based out of Estonia, Operation Azatize demonstrates our ability to exercise control of the air. Our Baltic allies do not have the necessary means to fully protect their own airspace, so we work with other NATO countries on a 4-month rotational basis to deploy our Typhoon aircraft on these air policing missions to protect their sovereign airspace from adversaries such as Russian aircraft. The situation in Ukraine highlights the importance of Azatize in controlling NATO airspace.
Demonstrating our air mobility and lift capability is Operation Pitting. In August 2021, following the rapid and unexpected collapse of the government in Afghanistan, the UK undertook evacuations of civilians as part of the multinational extraction effort. Within 2 weeks, our aircraft evacuated over 15,000 entitled persons, and on one of those flights, we managed to get a record of 439 people on board of a C-17, I have to say that, showing the determination of our service personnel to get as many people to safety as they could. The full fleet of RAF transport aircraft from Bryce Newton flew around the clock to enable the evacuation, supported by the RAF Police, Regiment, and the RAF Movers. In the months that followed, the RAF continued to repatriate hundreds more Afghans as part of the Operation Carriageway. And I do recommend that if you get a chance, do watch the Channel 4 documentary Evacuation. It should be on catch-up, but it is very good.
So, Operation Shader exhibits our attack and ISTAR capabilities. Op Shader began in August 2014, when the Royal Air Force started a series of humanitarian aid drops onto Mount Sinjar in northern Iraq. The airdrops were ordered following the genocide of the Yazidi people, which had led to them fleeing into the mountainside to escape Daesh. But the operation quickly changed to become the UK element of the US-led coalition that began the campaign to destroy Daesh. The Royal Air Force continues to survey and strike targets in Iraq and Syria as part of this global coalition, which aims to restore peace and stability to the region.
Our second enduring objective is to innovate for tomorrow so that we can continue as a world-class air force that delivers air and space capability for the UK. Innovating for tomorrow means building the next generation Royal Air Force to be ready to face the threats and challenges of the future. This will allow us to fly, fight, and win against an increasingly agile and capable adversary who are prepared to use asymmetric and hybrid warfare against us. As the world around us changes, then so must we. We must make the journey to the next generation Air Force so that we can always deliver air and space power to protect the nation. This journey has a name, and that's Astra.
So, Astra is built on the strong foundations of the Royal Air Force's remarkable first century, and it anticipates the challenges and the threats that a rapidly changing world will present 20 years from now. Our ability to think differently, to challenge the status quo and innovate will be fundamental to our success. An integral component of that transformation is environmental sustainability, and the Royal Air Force has committed to achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2040. But as aviation is our business, how are we going to do that? Well, we are making great strides in the use of sustainable and synthetic aviation fuels. From the first ever flight in November 2021 of a fully synthetically fueled aircraft to November 2022 when the Voyager aircraft flew with 100% sustainable aviation fuel to January this year, when we conducted air-to-air refuelling of a Typhoon and a Hercules using sustainable aviation fuel. The industry and the infrastructure is growing, opening the way to the potential for zero-carbon aviation. Now, let's take a look at the aircraft and capabilities that are building your next-generation Royal Air Force.
This is the Lightning. We've enhanced our combat air capability by introducing this 5th generation F-35B Lightning into frontline service. Lightning is a multi-role aircraft capable of combat missions, electronic warfare, and intelligence gathering. It's got the ability for short takeoff and vertical landing, enabling it to operate from aircraft carriers and in austere environments. It also has stealth technology, allowing it to fly undetected in hostile airspace. Lightning, it really is a world beater in all respects, and has demonstrated this on successful operations against Daesh.
This is the Protector. Protector is our new remotely piloted air system, and it will hugely bolster our ISTAR capabilities, creating a new fleet in greater numbers than ever before. After a successful development phase, Protector is set to enter service into the RAF by 2024. It's the first remotely piloted air system to be designed, built, and certified against stringent NATO and United Kingdom safety standards, lending to the development of groundbreaking sense and avoid technology, meaning that Protector can fly in busy civilian airspace.
This is the Poseidon. The Poseidon is equipped with highly technical sensors that can be used to detect, identify, and monitor hostile contacts both above and below the waves. The Royal Air Force has a fleet of 9 Poseidon aircraft, which has reconstituted our maritime patrol capability. Some of you may have remembered the Nimrod MR2 and the ill-fated MRA4 program, but the Poseidon now fills that gap. Poseidon operates from RAF Lossiemouth, from a new purpose-built strategic facility with state-of-the-art training equipment. This enables the RAF to be at the top of the table when it comes to submarine hunting air forces.
Space is an emerging domain, and the complex technology operating within this vast domain influences countless aspects of our lives, from everyday civilian, commercial, and economic activity to military operations on land, sea, and air. Therefore, we are making much greater investment into our cyber capabilities. UK Space Command is the defence lead for space operations. It's a joint command, and it's based at RAF High Wycombe. Working alongside our allies and partners, UK Space Command is at the forefront of activity to make space safe, secure, and sustainable for all generations. Following its formation in 2021, UK Space Command's capabilities and workforce have rapidly grown, and this year will encompass the responsibility for the Skynet satellite communications constellation.
Our final enduring objective is to value our people. The Royal Air Force recognises that there can be no higher priority. Our outstanding people, the whole force of regulars, reserves, civil service, and contractors are our greatest asset. We must attract and recruit the motivated and capable people that we need for our service. But just as importantly, we must sustain and develop the professional and adaptable workforce that already delivers air and space power for our nation. We ask a lot of our people, and in return, we offer unparalleled experiences, flexibility and reward packages, and a career that is no ordinary job. The RAF was established over a century ago as a meritocracy, where background, education, and heritage were not barriers to success. Those principles are as important now as they were in 1918. The Royal Air Force reflects the spectrum of changes within its society itself and is proud to be the first of the armed forces to have all of its 11 professions equally open to both male and female applicants. Our diverse, modern, and highly inclusive workforce remains at the forefront of applying air and space capabilities to real-world challenges today. We cannot protect, evolve, or inspire a next-generation Air Force without our wider RAF family. A notable example of this is shown in how we train our pilots.
RAF Valley has always produced world-class fighter pilots. We have new aircraft, new technology, both in the air and on the ground, which will allow us to push and train our pilots further than we've ever done before. And the reason we need that is because we're training for more advanced aircraft, like Lightning and Typhoon. So in the new Hawk, it feels just like sitting in a Typhoon when you're actually in the cockpit. Because of the level of training that we can do in the Hawk 2, that saves a lot of money because our flying cost is about a tenth of that of a frontline fighter. We have simulators which help us prepare our pilots for sorties and help consolidate their training after airborne sorties. And we combine that with debriefing systems, as you can see behind us here, which allow the pilots to rebuild the complex sorties that they flew and learn as much as they can from them. RAF Valley is on the leading edge of the whole force system. We've got contracted engineers, we've got civil servants, all working here to provide a team effort. They add a lot of enthusiasm and vigour and knowledge of how the modern generation learn. So really it's an exciting time with a wonderful bunch of people.
Only 5% of our 30,279 full-time strength are aircrew, only 5%. So from survival equipment specialists to RAF regiment gunners, the majority of our personnel support the tip of the spear. This year, the RAF is proud to have been recognised as number 4 in the top 100 apprenticeship employers list. This success highlights the fact that apprenticeships are central to our training philosophy to develop highly skilled, committed, and motivated aviators. So let's hear from one of our successful apprentices.
General technician workshops, and we're responsible for anything to do with the manufacturing, prototyping and modifying of any of the metal parts for the various pieces of equipment that we hold in the Air Force. We've got a range of complicated instruments and setups which enable us to produce some things that really are truly amazing, something that you wouldn't dream of producing in your shed unless you were seriously experienced. What's great about it is there's a lot of scope for creativity. There's a lot of ways that you can achieve a task. Unexpectedly, and I'm quite overwhelmed by this, but I've been announced as the winner for the Apprentice of the Year for my trade. What's nice is that it recognises the hard work that I've done, and it also showcases what we can do as a trade, because what we do, in my view, is indispensable. Not only does the apprenticeship give you skills that you have for life, it's built me tremendously as a person.
All our personnel are specialists. Everyone is indispensable in the generation of air power. This is why there is so much opportunity for development academically, mentally, and physically. We are encouraged to apply for courses that will improve our skill set, to undertake adventurous training, and even to pursue our own sports interests. So let us look at the training, teamwork, and work-life balance that makes us all capable and robust warfighters.
I'm a communications infrastructure technician. The purpose is to carry out communications throughout the forces world, so people in the office communicating to each other, all the way to global communications. If you haven't got communications, things don't work. Our speciality is working at height. The distances that you need for communications antennas need to be quite big and quite high. Physical challenges for a start. You've got to be able to climb there, but you've also got to think on your feet. You have to rely on people. It is very demanding, both individually and as a team. I'm an instructor at the Aero Rector School, and I like taking people to an area where they know what they're doing, they can climb, they can put connectors on, they can do communications, and then they go away and they put them into practice. Within my very first year, I learned to slalom law ski, and I now represent the Royal Air Force. Physically, it's very demanding, but it's also mentally as well, because there are so many aspects to it. It's not just a question of hanging onto a bit of rope with a bow pulling you and off you go. I'm an instructor in that as well, so I take the instructional role through the Air Force actually into my passion. Yeah, I absolutely love it, it's brilliant.
That's a really good point about having the opportunities in the Air Force. And do ask questions later on, because academically there are different foundation degree courses. I know of individuals that have gone off and done their PhDs as well, but personal development is super important in the Air Force, because we recognise that it's a journey, and to support people going through their careers, we need to give them other opportunities rather than just their career. Again, back to the script. For over 100 years, the Royal Air Force has defended the skies of Britain and projected Britain's power and influence around the world. As we continue to innovate for tomorrow and value our people, we will succeed today.
We do reflect on our heritage from our first century of service. At the same time, what is really important as we go forward is that we develop our capabilities to stay ahead of our adversaries, both in terms of our equipment, information, and how we utilise it. Combat air, it has to be able to fight its way into the target. Speed, manoeuvrability, and survivability. Then, when it gets to the target, you're looking for it to employ weapons safely and effectively. So the F-35 is a really exciting capability. It's our fifth generation combat aircraft. What this gives us is a low observability and a cutting edge sensor suite. As a key partner in the F-35's development programme, the UK has a vital role in the aircraft production. This provides 25,000 jobs in the UK across 500 different companies, and we receive 15% return for every aircraft produced. Typhoon remains at the heart of the RAF's combat air capability. Upgraded to carry the Storm Shadow, Brimstone, and Meteor. So the F-35 and Typhoon together will form the backbone of the Royal Air Force combat air. Intelligence, surveillance, target acquisition, and reconnaissance. This is all about looking, listening, and sensing to what the adversary might be doing, and this allows us to get one step ahead. We are also modernising a lot of the fleet currently in service. Beside it is our new maritime patrol aircraft. Working with the Royal Navy, it will monitor our coastlines and the deep seas, looking for hostile submarines and ships to protect our nation. NARPAS is a remotely piloted air system. It's effectively a traditional aircraft that we're taking the cockpit out of and placed somewhere else in the world. The protectorate is to civilian aviation standards. We can fly it in more weather conditions, and it's got fully automatic takeoff and landing. It also has an impressive endurance of up to 40 hours, which will be key to future success in operations. Our people are at the heart of everything we do, as we adapt at pace, in depth, and across our entire service. Contributing towards my service's journey of being the next generation Air Force of 2035, I feel enormously proud.
It's a complete honour to be in command of probably one of the biggest fast jet squadrons in the UK.
The best thing for me is that I could do ceremonial duties outside Buckingham Palace and be Jamaica's #1 bobsled pilot striving for the 2022 Olympics in Beijing.
It is a fantastic career and I'm proud to serve alongside some of the best people that I've met in my life.
The people I've met and the teams that I have worked with, who are prepared to deploy all over the world to save lives, is just one of the reasons I love being in the RAF.
Going to go off script again. So I've enjoyed talking to so many people tonight, especially those with the RAF connections that they already had. And it made me think of my last bit here. Finally, the RAF has around 33,000 personnel. But did you know that there are over 1 million veterans that have served in the RAF? Their service is not forgotten, and we strive to maintain links and support where we can. These charities support service personnel, veterans, and families in a variety of tailored ways. If you or someone you know needs support, please contact one of the charities listed. And that brings us to the end of the formal part of the presentation. And once again, thank you so much for inviting us down here. It's been an absolute privilege. But now comes the good bit, hopefully, and we'll do some questions and answers, I think, Harry. Thank you very much. We don't normally get questions.
You mentioned two words earlier in your presentation, asymmetric and hybrid warfare. Could you explain what they are?
Want to go? Okay. Asymmetric, sort of like it can come from, we don't know where it's going to come from. And the hybrid side, it pretty much means, if you look at all the planes here, we know where the enemy was sort of coming from. It was in the air, it was on the ground, but the hybrid side is definitely, we don't know where it's coming from. So especially in Catherine's role that she's taken forward with, she mentioned about the role that she's doing at the moment, doing the sort of IT support. But the reality is, we do need to have that cyber side as well, which then goes into a different domain, maybe the 5th domain, and I think the Americans class the space domain as the 6th domain. So that's what I mean about the hybrid side. It's no longer just simple aircraft which are going to go and fly in a dogfight against somebody else. The F-35 as well, you know, beforehand you used to have the Spitfire or Hurricane. It was just one aircraft that did one job, whereas the F-35, that is a very specialist piece of kit. Yes, it can do all the fighting stuff, but also it is a mini I-Star platform as well, as was mentioned. So that's what I mean about the hybrid side. And the asymmetric thing is, you know, it can come from anywhere, really.
Is that also, because you hear in the war in Ukraine, where by the Russians, and both sides, I suppose, they're interfering with the drones and trying to bring the drones down electronically. So it's that type of thing as well. I suppose that's more your domain, Catherine.
Yeah, so electronic warfare is where that comes in, where we're able to jam the signals that so that they can't see us, or so that they can't communicate with their aircraft. Do you want to elaborate on that, sir?
No, but exactly right. Jamming's a big part of it. So you only have to look at some of the things that have happened in previous conflicts where they haven't even fired a single round or dropped a single bomb, and they've taken out the adversary's communication systems. And that is a big part of it. But what we have seen in Ukraine is you can have all the other hybrid style, but sometimes it just comes down to boots on the ground and aircraft in the sky. But yeah.
Maybe come back to that in a moment. Any other questions? Got one down. Oh, I'll come back to you in a second. Got another one just down here. Oh, Gareth.
You mentioned that you now have a role in PR and making sure that your bosses say the right things.
how difficult is it the relationship with the political world, where politicians are not exactly reasonable people sometimes? Is that a difficult thing to manage, or are they reasonably respectful of the RAF?
Oh, no. I think both sides are extremely respectful from the Air Force. And when I said, I'm working in PR, I can absolutely categorically tell you that anything that you'll read in RAF Media and Communications, either digital or elsewhere, we don't spin anything. So one of the areas that sometimes people comment on is if there's been a negative story in one of the newspapers, it's like, why have the Air Force not gone straight in and said something to support our side? And the reality is you're never going to win with the people who obviously have a different view on you. It's not worth it. That's not our battle. But what we can absolutely say is what you read in the papers, we don't spin. So whatever's happened politically or otherwise, what the politicians do, at the end of the day, we just have to go with whatever decisions they've made and worry about it at a later day when we've all left and we're drinking G&Ts around the table, But the reality is once you've joined up, you're signed up to something, and we have to respect and have faith in what the politicians are saying. Does that answer your question? That'll do.
This is probably an unfair question, but the F-35 Lightning is phenomenal and extremely expensive. But I understand we're now working with the Japanese and the Italians, God help you, to develop a new next generation fighter.
The Tempest.
Yeah, what can be done to make it better than a Lightning?
That is a really good question. As a non-fast jet man, I'm not quite sure. But it is such a new technology. The reality is that in all warfare, you have to keep ahead of the game. Otherwise, we wouldn't have generations, first, second, third, fourth generation. So Typhoon's like 4.5, and now we're up to 5th generation. But the reality is the adversaries will always be trying to figure out what to do next. But I think that the new aircraft will be much more designed around interacting with more aircraft around it, but not necessarily manned aircraft and things like that. But it's just a way of, we know that the time will come when all aircraft's life expire, fatigue life or whatever it is, but we can't stop developing an aircraft now, otherwise we won't have anything in the 10 years it will take to develop it. So I think that's probably what I would say as a non-fast jet person.
Manjeet, this is another fast jet question, but we keep on going about drones. I mean, do you see a time where actually fast jet pilots won't exist? They won't be human beings anymore, that actually you'll go fully over to drone?
As an engineer, I would say yes, but then as a pilot, I'm not the person who's having to press the button. But what I can say is that I think there'll be a blend. There's definitely a blend. What we have shown in our current drone technology is that you don't have to be in that location to fly that aircraft. But then it's very difficult. It has its limitations as well on what you can and can't see from being a drone operator at one of our locations. But I think there will always need to be a pilot in the air. I think in that combat role, in a combat role, yeah. But then alongside it, you may have other aircraft which aren't manned. And I think that's where we will be, but I can't predict the future. That's where I see it, because the reality is, as the engineers in the room will know, the one thing that stops a fast jet flying at 20G, that 30G, is the squidgy bit in the middle or the front. If you get rid of that aircraft can do way more. And if you take out all the life support system of an aircraft, well, you can put more weapons on it if you needed to, and it can perform better as well. But right now, I do think it's the, we can go into the discussions of morality of altitude and things like that. I think for the time being, for at least the next generation, we will still have pilots somewhere in the loop flying.
I think it is important to note, though, that the drones, the unmanned aircraft, they are manned still. They are flown by a human, by a pilot. They just happen to be on the ground. So the aircraft can fly for up to, say, the new Protector can fly for up to 40 hours. And in that time, 3 different pilots might have taken the wheel. It's still a person they're just not in the aircraft in the sky. So I think...
That's a fab answer, a really good point, yeah.
Another question here.
Is this where artificial intelligence will take over?
That's why I wanted to point out that it's still a person who's flying the aircraft. It's not artificial intelligence.
I think we're in a scary place with artificial intelligence, and on the military side we see that as well. But I don't think we're quite there with the T-1000 yet, so fingers crossed.
Question here.
Are you concerned that the funding cuts for the military, the armed forces, the RAF in particular, are leaving us undefended effectively?
Is it leaving us undefended? The reality is that there has been funding cuts, but if you actually had a look at the last round, we actually did get more money to fund more things as well. And the reality is, we're not in that situation yet where things are going to stop happening, if that makes sense. But there's always a worry about funding cuts. We will then have to figure out what capability do we do or which capability don't we do. But right now, everything you've seen in the presentation, we are not in a situation where it's critical that we're going to have to stop something. But I think, yeah, if the funding kept cutting into the future, I think what Ukraine has done is shown that that's a really big mistake, and I can't see it happening, but that's the world according to Manj, not the world according to the Air Force. Yeah.
I was going to ask you a question. Am I back on? Yep. Ask you a question on Ukraine, actually, Manjeet. I mean, as an engineer, I mean, obviously this is, you know, a political point, but as an engineer, what do you make of Ukrainian pilots being now trained, I think, on F-16s, and presumably their engineers maintaining it? It seems to me that that's a huge undertaking to get the engineers on the ground and the pilots in the air up to standards. An easy thing to say, but quite difficult to accomplish.
It's a very difficult challenge, and we're doing the best we can. I think a real a story that shows how it does work, and people know this, is integration of different systems onto an aircraft. And I have to admit, when I heard that we were giving storm shadows to the Ukrainians, it's like, that's taken us years to get onto our aircraft, and I'm sure you'll recognize that. Yet they turned that round in months to put onto their aircraft to then deliver capability in Ukraine. So I think when there's a need to do something like this, it happens, and we have to do that. And we have to give them the training as well. There's no point in giving them kit without the support and training that goes along with it, otherwise it just won't last.
That's what I meant, yeah, the very extensive training that's required to get them fully competent. I mean, what is the timescale now? When do you think can we reasonably expect to see Ukrainian pilots deploying in F-16s?
I can't comment, because the F-16 is not ours.
Of course,
so we're not giving them, and they're not flying Typhoons, which isn't, you know, if it wasn't one of our aircraft, I could possibly comment, but I don't know what the training pipeline is for the F-16.
Any other questions? Got one here.
One on geography? No. Tough crowd.
You talk about the time-expired airframes.
Yeah.
And we're interested, or I'm interested, in what's going to replace the Hawk in the Red Arrows.
Really good point, but you do know they still make the Hawk.
Yes, but it will die one day, won't it?
I don't know, not if British Aerospace have something to say in it. But the reality is it's still super capable. So, I mean, even going back to my old aircraft knowledge days, you know, with the Hawk 100 and 200 coming out, that's still a brand new platform. So they do keep modifying it, but I don't think there's anything in the pipeline to replace the Hawk as the fast jet trainer of choice. But I could be wrong on that one. So you're right, it is an aging platform, but it is also being developed as an attack capability as well as just the training capability as well. And the thing is that the Hawk's got such a large reach. So if you know your Hawks, you know, I couldn't believe it when I found out that the Americans have been flying Gosh Hawks to do their training as well, to land aircraft on their aircraft carriers. But the reach for the Hawk goes out. So can you imagine what that contract's going to be when that aircraft needs replacing? Wow, that's bigger than F-35, you know.
Okay, do we have a question over here? Yeah.
I did my apprenticeship here. Sorry? Well, I did my apprenticeship here at British Aerospace, and
I love British Aerospace.
Yeah,
wouldn't say a bad word against them.
And it always interests me. I sort of talk to various people, and I don't think they realise all the different projects that we got involved in later days. I was just hearing you mention Skynet. I remember we were in the stress office, and we did the original, so we did the check stress on it. And my boss at the time, Raj Sarin, it was rather unfriendly called his Raj's baked bean tin. But it was quite funny because I think we did 3 check stresses on it, because originally it was going to go up on a rocket, probably Ariane or something. Then it was going to go up on the shuttle, and then they had the accident, and then it went back and we had to redo it for going up on a rocket again. So it just shows the amount of projects that that Weybridge got involved in.
Yeah, and the fact is, you know, we've got back the not the control of space, but under with Space Command forming at RAF High Wycombe, that's a really big piece. So back in the early 2000s, I remember we'd given over that capability. Excuse me, we'd contracted it out. And now we're bringing it back in again to make it more of a military capability, if anybody remembers 1001 Signals Unit and places like that. So it is a capability that we're taking back in control, but it's because it's such a big domain now, and if you've got to be in it to make sure that you're ahead of your adversaries.
Okay, any other questions? I've got one more that I was asked to ask you, completely different subject, but maybe an interesting one. It's awards for valour, and it's back to the subject of 3 guys on the ground flying a mission in a drone. Now, in the old days, or with fast jet pilots themselves, they are personally in the front line. Is there any thought process about whether awards for valour are potentially available to people, you know, doing those kinds of things from the ground, where they're not in any personal danger?
So that sort of thing, you know, flying crosses and things like that would be awarded, you would think. So I don't know, I'm trying to rack my brains because I help out with the honours and awards as well, and I can't remember if there was anybody that has been a UAS pilot that has had something, but it absolutely needs to be considered for the future. So, you know, the last flying cross was awarded from, I think it was Op Pitting, and this wasn't because he's a C-17 pilot, but Kev's a friend of mine, but he took his aircraft off, and you're absolutely right, but it was because of the danger and the safety sort of argument of what he had done. But I think that if a drone pilot has saved our troops on the ground or saved something very bad from happening, absolutely needs to be considered. I will double check with you and get back to you actually, because I wouldn't be surprised if they have been awarded. I just can't recall at the moment, but you're right, it should be.
Yeah, maybe a different kind of award, you know, to reflect the changing realities.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? No, I think that's about it then. So, well, thank you very much, Manjeet and Catherine, and a big round of applause, please, for our excellent presentation.
No worries. Great stuff.